Okay, so this is what we'd like to present to you today. This is a piece of research, only a tiny part of a much, much larger project, which finished last year. Took over a year and a half to gather quite a lot of data from many different clubs across and around the country and across all the tiers of the women's game. So what we're going to share with you today is one aspect that comes from players' accounts, and we're particularly focusing on how they spoke about care. Okay, so one of the things we're trying to do here is highlight what is it that players are saying. Now, they said many, many things, but what really hit us was this idea here that, and if you look at the quotes on the right-hand side, she just gives you confidence. She's so down to earth, and she treats you like a human being. It's good. Now, the fact that somebody feels that they need to talk about the fact that I'm treated as a human stood out to us. And as we started to look into this a little bit more, we realised that there was a narrative here, something that really needs to be shared. And so, Jess, can we go on to the next one? One of the things we looked for was a model that would identify some sort of theoretical account, or at least a really good account to allow us to tell the story of care. And we found this. This is a model that comes from the work of Nell Noddings. And it's probably, if you look into the research, you realise hardly anyone has ever looked at this area. And I'm looking out here and I'm thinking there's people here who are coaches, people here who are maybe still players, people that love football. And one of the things we probably love is that we've had awesome relationships. We've got great friends in this area, whether you're working or playing, coaching, or you have some other role. We like belonging to friendship groups, and it's part of our identity. So it's more amazing that care has hardly been looked at. Now, on the previous slide, one of the big things that came out was that players wanted to be seen as a person, not just a number or a player without any other identity. And so what Jess is going to do now is just go into a little bit of each of these three areas to give you a little bit more information about what were the themes that came out, and what was it the players were saying. Yeah. Over to you, Jess.
Thank you. So we kind of looked at the work of Noddings and her care theory when we were braced with all this information that we gathered. And from there, you'll see we've got a variety of different quotes from all tiers of the game that we were able to go and look at, and with the data we're able to extract, which we're really fortunate to have. But I think some of the main things we want to kind of bring to your attention, and what we found is specifically within the women and girls games, is the fact with Noddings' work around care, she kind of talks about the three key things we had on the previous slide, where we've got the responsiveness, the relatedness, and the receptiveness, which we'll go through individually. So from here, when we're talking about being receptive as a coach and understanding care within the women and girls game, we're looking mainly about being approachable and available, encouraging open dialogue, having mutual respect, and valuing the players' perspectives. So when you start looking at the data and the data set we collected, this was, I suppose it was kind of prevalent across every aspect we looked at, hence why we started to draw and look into this a little bit deeper. I'm sure there might be similar things within other sports, but yet we were specifically focusing on this just within the women and girls game and looking at football specifically.
Just if you're roving.
Oh yeah, thank you. When we started to kind of go on from this, we're like, okay, we've got that initial receptiveness, but we want to kind of work this out a little bit more to see what other things are important when coaching within the women and girls game. And being related and being able to be related to was another key aspect that came out specifically within the work we were looking at. When we're looking at recognising relationships and having that individual interaction with the athletes and the coaches that you're working with needs to be clear. Understanding your players as individuals. I think this was something that was really massive when we looked at the information we're provided with. And just knowing it's more than just being about football. You don't just exist within that single environment that you're in. It's about being able to understand everything that comes around and along with that in order to be successful with what you've got. So with some of the quotes here, obviously I think the slides will be available for you afterwards, but you can see there's evidence from each of the tiers that we looked at, whether that being at grassroots, talent, or at a performance level as well. When we're finally going on to the next aspect, we start to look at being responsive within this environment. So acknowledging different needs that our players have in order to be kind of work with them in the way that we do. working on the interpersonal skills, which I think Abbe we might touch upon a little bit later, and how important they are in order to be effective within that caring relationship. And being able to communicate in a way that doesn't just mean you're communicating as a coach on the pitch or within training, but actually being able to have those one-to-one conversations with the individuals afterwards and also outside those environments in order to be effective within the women and girls game as well.
And so then just to wrap up some of our conclusions, we really want to say, so what? So we found some stuff, we're going to talk about it, we're going to write it up, we're going to share it, but so what? What difference might that make? I'm going to start with the second point on here, because this is really important, very, very important, that though we know we're hearing it in the narratives of players and actually coaches as well, caring as a concept is very much viewed, or certainly along with ideas like nurturing and empathy, it's viewed as a gendered characteristic. It's women and females that have these characteristics. There's no need for men to have these. And that's highly problematic. And as you can see here, Norman talks a little bit about the fact that if we carry on believing those sorts of things, actually what we end up doing, we'll keep going the difference and the inequity we have in coaching in a whole range of environments. And in this case, obviously, we're talking about football. So when we hear these voices from athletes, what we're realising, it's not just from coaches. They want care in all their types of relationships, their friendships, their peer relationships. And so we sort of link to the work at the top there. Actually, what we need is this web of caring relationships. And so one of the things we quite like to do, and that comes to the third point down here, we want to think, well, what would it look like if we understood caring in all different sorts of relationships? What would that look like? And how strange might it be initially to even have conversations in coach education, coach development about care? Because one of the things we absolutely know, that is not in anyone's coaching qualification or programme at the moment. We're just at the beginning of understanding the concept through the role description of someone called a player care officer. So really we're going to wrap up now by just kind of pointing out this final question that we've got. Oh no, that's not our final question. So our final question's in blue down here. How are we going to go about creating this caring climate, both in what coaches do, but also in the broader game? And that's a rhetorical question. We don't think there's an answer right now, and we think it's pretty complex. It's certainly multi-layered, and we're going to have to find somewhere to start. So maybe that's a dissertation project or a research project or a club here that would like to take that a little bit further. And if you are interested, please do contact us afterwards through Tom or any of the organising team. We'd love to maybe take some questions at the end as well. Okay, thank you very much.